So this is our second of our webinars highlighting CareerScope and our partners. There has been overwhelming response to this one, which is really exciting. I'm hoping it's the topic. I'm not sure what today was fantastic. People were begging us to let them in. So we are beyond capacity. We are standing room only. We added tickets first thing this morning. So we're glad this is a topic that people are really interested in. We will, like I said, be sharing this recording at the end. If there are people that you know of that could not make this, we will post it to YouTube. We'll also send it out via LinkedIn, and all of you will get a copy as well. If you have any questions, the chat is on during the session, so just send them. We'll make sure we get to them by the end of the hour. And we'll share our contact information for CareerScope as well as our panelists at the end if you have any questions that either you thought of after the webinar or we didn't get to during this hour. Just a little bit about why we offer this webinar series. We are at CareerScope committed to helping our partners achieve their missions and help the individuals they serve. And we're also committed to those individuals who are in transition, helping them discover best fit career options, career opportunities as they move forward on their path. And so part of doing this is we are committed to making sure that we listen to and interact with our partners as often as possible. And we want to learn from them about what's working and what's not working for them so that we can continue to change CareerScope to be more impactful for the people that they serve. So today's session is focusing on our partners at Michigan Department of Corrections and the innovative ways that they're preparing the people that they work with to enter or return to work upon release. Michigan Department of Corrections is a longtime partner of CareerScope since 2001. So, over 20 years. And just in the past 5 years alone, they've assessed almost 40,000 individuals with CareerScope. And they recently extended their partnership with us, and they will be using CareerScope with an additional 30,000 individuals over the next coming years. So we have a long-standing relationship with them and, have a vested interest in making sure that we help them, achieve their mission. So today, joining me from the Michigan team is Jessica Evans, who's a departmental specialist in the education section, Dean McGregor, who is the assistant education manager, and Daniel Seal, who's an employment readiness job developer. So I'll have them talk a little bit about what they do in a minute. I just wanted to make you aware of the fact that we've recently read that 27 million Americans are actually looking for work, but they remain unemployed because they fall into a quote unquote hidden category due to hiring practices. They're hidden from employers. Companies keep these employees who are often justice involved individuals. They're sometimes screened out of applicant pools and are therefore not given the opportunity. And so we believe that investing in these hidden workers and transforming hiring practices would actually address some talent gaps and hiring needs of many employers. So the investments that Michigan Department of Corrections has been making over the past years, they have developed a strong talent pipeline. And we think that model that they use should and can be a model for other correctional programs. And it could also inspire hiring organizations to rethink the way that they look at candidates, identify candidates, assess them, and recruit. So we believe that these justice involved individuals are a hidden pool of talent that employers need to investigate. So today with our Michigan team, we'll hear about their vocational, educational, and reentry programs. We'll hear some case studies about their positive impact that they are making. They identify early on what best fit training programs would be for these individuals and get them started early. And then they create and collaborate. They make partnerships with local employers to make that success happen. They work proactively. They educate their employers on the benefits of hiring these individuals from these programs. So in fact, in one case, and we'll hear about this today, they actually collaborated with an employer to create a training program to meet the needs of both the employer and the individuals that were looking for work. So we'll hear all about that today. So let's get started. I'll ask our panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what their role is on the team. Jessica, I'm just going to pick on you. If you want to start, that's fine. You are muted, so I just want to ask you to unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry about that. Hi, everybody. I am Jessica Evans. I work with, well, as Chris already said, the Department of Corrections. I'm in the education section as departmental specialist. In my role, I work a lot with our employment counselors and our employment readiness instructors, overseeing that they're getting their tasks done to make sure that every offender is leaving with a workforce development file, that they are completing work keys as necessary at the front end, that they're completing their career scope, they're getting the vocational counseling completed. I also do lots of other stuff, but for today's purpose, I'm letting you know that piece. So thank you for having us here, and I look forward to sharing all of our information.
Thanks, Jessica. Okay, Dan or Dean, whoever wants to go next, that's fine.
I'll go ahead and go. I appreciate you guys taking the time to meet with us today. You'll see that this particular area in the vocational village will give you a talent pool you have not yet seen, and a group that you can tap for your needs when it comes to hiring. I'm the job developer for the vocational village, and typically what I do overall more than anything is help employers connect to our students within the village. So I'm very happy you're here today and learning about the village, and any way we can help and connect with you guys would be great. So I appreciate your time.
My name is, yep, I'm still there. My name is Dean McGregor. I'm currently serving as the Assistant Education Manager for Department of Corrections. Mainly my role right now is covering all of our academic, vocational training programs, vocational village, post-secondary opportunities throughout all of our, we have 29 correctional facilities statewide, roughly 285 educational staff at various facilities, and then within our central office location. Vital documents is a huge thing for our department that all of our offenders are leaving with all that. So a lot of array, a lot of different things, a lot of different moving parts, but definitely career scope, our training programs, I think are leading the nation in regards to what we're doing. And I'm happy to have that conversation about them today.
So I guess if we want to start with an overview, I know there's so many programs. I know there's the vocational education program, the reentry program, the villages program. So can you give us an overview of the program in general, and then if there's specific programs that you'd like to highlight, especially with regard to this webinar topic and assessment and preparing the talent pipeline?
Yeah, I can share with everybody. Within the Department of Corrections, we have academic programs, we have vocational programs, we have college programs. For our academic education, we use GED testing and HiSET. For our vocational programs, we'll get into that. We have, I can't even tell you the number right off the top of my head. And we also have college programs. We have a number of colleges that we offer associate's degrees. And I believe there are now there are bachelor's degrees as well. So what we do at the beginning of all this, once someone, well, even before they have their high school equivalency, we complete career scope for everyone who is going to be taking a vocational trade at some point in their incarceration. We are hoping to, in the near future, also include that for college programming. So we want to see, what track they're going to take. Are they going to start off, take a college program, maybe move on to vocational training, or are they just going to go right into vocational training? That's why we career scope so many students through our department, because that is a basis for our whole vocational counseling component. They come in, they complete career scope. We take a look to see what their interests are, what their aptitudes are. We look at their education history. We look at their work history. We look at where they're going to be placed, and we use all that information to have a conversation about what trade will be best for them and allow for the most success. So I just want to stress that career scope is a huge help in that, because it gives us a baseline of where to start with where to go and to have conversation with them. Because during this vocational counseling process, we talk to them and we say, hey, what are you interested in? And they kind of a lot of times they have no clue. They're just like, wow, I really don't know. So we're able to look at the assessment and say, okay, well, here's where some of your interests fall. And then we're able to see if they even have the aptitude for some of those interests, which is really great. You know, we get people that are like, oh, well, I want to do welding. And then we take a look and we're able to see, well, you're not quite there yet with math. However, you don't have your high school diploma yet. So let's focus on getting your high school equivalency first. And then let's have this conversation later on to see if maybe you have those skills in a year or two to be able to take those programs that you want. So that is what I have for that. I don't know if Dean or Dan have anything else to add.
I'll add a little bit to that, Jess. A little background in regards to some of our vocational trades programs. Years ago, an offender sat at one of our facilities and had a recommendation for a vocational trade. They took what was at the facility. It's just, that's how it worked. If they sat at one of our 29 facilities and they had a trade program and we had food technology sitting there, that's what they took. Where the career scope assessment has really come into play for us, and we kind of relooked at everything. We went through back in about 2014, 15 and revamped all of our vocational trades programs so they have some type of state or national credential that goes along with them. Started introducing career scope where we can get a really good assessment in regards to the offenders. We hired what's called employment counselors at all of our correctional facilities. The employment counselors are the ones that are doing the assessment on the offenders. They're reviewing that career scope assessment, checking their interests and aptitudes, and basically having a good one-on-one conversation with them so we can try to get them in the right program. Right, our saying is right prisoner, right program, right time, prior to their release, as close as we can to their release, so that training is fresh in their minds. Really, part of that process, and it took a lot of buy-in from our leadership. Like I said before, we have 29 facilities. So if I have an offender that wanted a welding program, and this offender was sitting up in one of our UP facilities, but that welding program sitting down where Mr. Seal's at, which is a 7-hour trip, we would transfer them. We're moving them for that program. That was a big thing, and that was a big buy-in from our leadership, so we can get the right prisoners in the right program at the right time, so that when they're released, they have that training, that experience, and it's something that they want to do when they get out. We're finding that career for them, not just a job, but a career. We're making those connections with employers right now. So that was a lot of, that's how the part of the concept of Vocational Village started, but all that, getting them moved, get them in the right spot, and that buy-in, hiring the employment counselors. Mr. Seal is a job developer. He takes I always refer to as the job developers are our employment counselors on steroids. It's just because they are so engulfed with employers reaching out, making employer contacts, resumes, and everything. And I'll let Dan speak in regards to that because he deals with it on a day-to-day, everyday basis. So,
real quick before Dan chimes in, I want to mention too, when Dean was the vocational specialist, one of the things he did was work with employers to find out what their need was. And we adapted our vocational programs based on employment opportunities, needs for the employers. So Dean brought in some vocational programs that we never had before based off of what the need was out in the community. And then we also cut back on other trades. So our vocational classes aren't just set to have XYZ classes at certain facilities and that's it. It's constantly changing and updating based on what the needs are for employment out in the community.
we have 16 different vocational trades programs right now, and roughly, I believe it's the numbers at about 75 or 80 vocational trades instructors statewide teaching the various trades. So when I say that, we have 11 culinary arts programs statewide. We have 2 auto programs. We have 4 welding programs. We have 3 CDL programs. So that's to gauge out of 16 different trades. We have them various throughout different facilities. So if offender, and we'll get into this later, if offender does not qualify for our vocational village, we can try to get them that trade at another facility.
Thanks, Dean. That covered a lot of what I was going to talk about too. I will touch in when it comes to the resume itself and connecting the different students to the employers. I cold call employers. I do emails. Any which way I can go to connect the two, I do. Go out and visit. We do tours here for employers if they ever want to come in and look at the facility, which we highly recommend, and see these guys in action with the trades instructors. So basically with the resume, they send them to me. I work through them. I have them tweaked to best fit their trade and their soft skills. And then I send them out to employers. It's called an email blast, and that goes throughout the whole state. And then from there, I connect to the employers via that email or direct email from me. So that takes two and connects them.
Dan's being a little modest too. He takes it even a step further because Dan reaches out to our instructors because the employers are reaching out to Dan and they're saying, hey, Mr. Seal, how is this person? And Dan has that. Our instructors aren't reaching out to the employers. Dan's the one doing that. So Dan's having that one-on-one conversation with the instructors. And we have that open dialogue. If they're looking for a couple auto guys, but this guy's been in the classroom for 6-7 months. And, you know, this last month, he's been a little tardy with some of his stuff. Dan lets them know. And the offenders know that we're having that conversation. We're open and honest with every one of our employers because we want to keep that good relationship. So, and then, you know, everybody's not perfect when they come out. Everybody does make a mistake and we all do realize that, but we're trying to give the best of what we can and keeping that open dialogue with employers. And that's what keeps them coming back to us too.
So this employer conversation that you said you had, do you have that with the villages participants as well as, do you do the same thing for the general population, or is this just for the people that are enrolled in the villages program?
The job developers work specifically for, we have 3 job developers because we have 3 vocational villages right now. We do let employers know if Dan only has 3 people coming out of a welding program and we have an employer that needs six people, we let them know we do have other welding programs, but they're not vocational village programs. And I can make that contact with the instructor to find out if some of those guys are paroling within that region or if they're going to be, their release date is coming up, so we can make that connection. Our biggest problem there at those facilities is, again, we don't have the job developer that has a lot of that communication going on, but it is possible. Typically, we don't get a lot of that, but we are working towards how can we make that connection. My predecessor now works in another area within our offender success administration that deals with that outreach. So the community connections are, and we're having those conversations in regards to how can we better connect some of our other trades that aren't villagers or at the village with employers. So we are having those conversations right now.
And can you just give us an overview for people who aren't familiar, the villages program, how it's different, how it's more intense, how the participants have to apply to be a part of that program? Could you just give an overview about that program itself?
Dan, I'm gonna let you talk a little bit on this and then I'm gonna elaborate on yours.
So when these guys come to prison, they can apply to the village itself. So in order to get there, they have to go through the career scope. They have to do an assessment through that in order for us to determine where their track is. We do what's called voc counseling, but there's a big process in that. In the voc counseling, we meet with the student, returning citizen, and discuss their background, their work history, go over their schooling, go over their family support, and actually talk to them and see what their goals are for their life. So we can best take that information, plus the career scope, plus their interests, and kind of bring those all together into what we call the voc counseling to determine where they would best fit in an actual vocational trade. Now, it can be in a village or it can be in another trade altogether. But for the village itself, we want to make sure that, one, they're, we call above or a little bit, a touch above the average returning citizen. So they have to go through a background check in the way of misconducts. And then we take that information and then we discuss the village from there. So they have to apply to get in through, we call it an assessment, and they have to write down like a small essay with questions regarding why they want to be in the village. And we take that information and then we discuss the village if they go past that. So it's not just hey, you're in and thanks for coming. It's they got to actually work for it and want it. And that's how they get into it from there. So that's kind of an overall how to get in the village itself. So 3 villages, it's not easy to get in, but that's why it's doing so well. And we make sure we assess each one that comes through. So Dean, if you want to add to that, you can.
Yeah, I mean, they'll fill out an application through that assessment and that conversation the employment counselor is having with the offender. We can give them an application at that time if they within the criteria of getting into our vocational village. If they don't, if they've taken the career scope and we've had that counseling process and they might be 4 months away from fitting within our guidelines of being in the vocational village, they can later on put in an application. Sometimes we'll hold on to applications too, but we're reviewing those applications, determine tickets and whether or not they're going to be a good fit for vocational village, the training programs and everything like that. The applications are sent up to our central office locations and they're reviewed up there. And then if we feel that that person would be a good candidate for the vocational village, we are then making those having those conversations with another unit where we can look to potentially get that offender transferred to the correct facility for that. We're having that conversation with our facility staff too, because obviously housing situations and everything like that, we want to make sure they're aware in regards to what they have coming in regards to programming. Our vocational village is unique in regards to we house them all within one housing unit. We separate them the best we can in regards to prison terms, the best we can from the other general population of people. We mimic a normal work day the best we can inside a prison where they're going to work or school, 6.5 hours a day, 5 days a week. We want them in class. We want them in intense training. That's when we're also bringing in employers. We're having those conversations with employers. These guys see employers walking through on a daily basis. That was another big thing, is bringing in employers and allowing these tours to happen is what's been selling a lot of our programs, because the employer will walk through. They'll have that conversation with the offender and we're open and honest and we let them do that. We have no problems with that. They want to talk to somebody, want to talk to our instructors, we'll show them everything we have, but the open dialogue so they at least have some comfort in regards to knowing what type of individual that they're getting. I can show them something on paper, but until you have that conversation with them, it's another thing. And I will honestly challenge any other smaller trade school out there. I think our trade schools are very competitive to what's college or basically what you see in the community. We have state-of-the-art equipment, unique trainings, everything again has some state or national credential that comes along with it. And that's what we focus in on. Jess, did I miss something? If you want to add anything to that, I'm sure I did.
Yeah, no, that's okay. The other thing I would add is that they do, when possible, they also try to get like a written reference or recommendation from someone that works with the offender daily. So it could be if they're on a job assignment, it could be their supervisor, it could be a prison counselor, if it's maybe it's a corrections officer, but we do try to get some character referrals or recommendations as well in that process. So there's a lot to it. And the other thing I just want to clear up for everybody here, because there tends to be a lot of confusion at times because we keep referring to the vocational village and other trades. We have trades available throughout the whole entire state. And as Dan mentioned and Dean both, the vocational village is part of the education section. It's just something we do in addition for those higher level offenders getting ready to leave. There are some offenders that would qualify for the village, but because of other reasons, they can't get into the village. So they do still have the opportunity to take the trade at another facility that is not a village facility. And we'll probably get to this later on, but we are working on a process called, it's an exit interview, where essentially what we would do is we would work with, it's called the Offender Employment and Opportunities Unit. So if if an employment counselor were talking to an offender doing the exit interview, and they did find that they had a pretty solid work history, they did some vocational training, and they seemed like a good candidate per conversation, then they would refer that person over to OEOU is our acronym for it. And then they would try to make that job connection once the offender has paroled. So there are some gaps in there that we're trying to fill in, so that way it's not just those at the Voc Village that we're helping to find employment for. It's everyone that's been within MDOC and they want to work.
We have a question from the chat, which is related to what we were just talking about when you bring the employers through. Someone asked, if you're doing cold outreach to businesses, how do you combat the myths or the naysayers about hiring someone who is justice involved?
I can handle that. I've been working with HR for the last 15 years, and I actively recruited felons when I was on the outside before coming here. And I found that this group, the returning citizens, would actually have a better return when it comes to showing up every day. So I actively looked for this group. I had success with them when I was on the outside before coming here. And when this position came open, I was all in, just because I believed in this group and what they did and who they were. That everyone needs a second chance. This group was no different. So I actively recruited employers when it came to this group because they're missing an entire talent pool. And a lot of it was they were worried about changing their hiring criteria in order to review this group. And I always tell them, you never change your hiring criteria. I just ask you to give them a second chance, a second look, and let's talk about some of your concerns. And the South, when it comes to the vocational village, to come in and look and actually see what they do day-to-day basis, and the instruction they get and the team we put together, the instructors, is excellent. Like Dean said, I would put this against anything that's out there when it comes to talent base and the instruction that they do here. So it's not difficult now to convince people when it's difficult to find good talent, to bring them in and say, just look at the program, talk to our guys and see what they have to offer. You can definitely see they have a lot to offer when it comes to talent. So the employers are willing to give them a second chance. And I try to address anything or any concerns that they may have regarding the village or the returning citizen themselves. We're very open and we're very honest with them. And the guys here themselves are very open and honest. And it's all public information. So they can jump in at any time and ask questions. And I try to address them head on, one-to-one.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
For that person,
Pardon me, Dan?
did that answer the question for that person?
I'm hoping so. Ashley, if you have a follow-up, feel free to post it in chat. Yep, it did. Thank you. Since we're on employers, can you give us an example of a partnership that was successful for you? I know DTE is a big one, and I know that's one I definitely want to highlight. If you have another one too, that's fine. But I know that was one that when we spoke prior to this, it just blew my mind, that story. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing partnership. So if you could share that, that would be great.
I'll speak on the DTE one. I know Dan has other ones too that are awesome as well. DTE approached us probably back, I think it was in 2016 or part of early 17, that they had a desperate need for line clearance tree trimmers. They roughly manage 30 to 31,000 miles. 31,000 miles of distribution lines here in the state of Michigan, and they were having a hard time hiring and getting tree trimmers to do that job. They were actually on a tour at Dan's facility. I think they might have been looking at something else at the time, and I was there, and one of the gentlemen was the manager of that section within DTE, and he goes, "Hey, have you guys ever thought about this type of program?" And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I was a little hesitant at first. Anybody that, I don't know how many people are on this call work corrections, but anytime you're talking chainsaws, climbing structures, ropes, it's not something typical that you're going to want to bring inside the Department of Corrections and have that conversation with our leadership or facility staff about. Again, the dialogue kept going, and the jobs that were out there and the interest that they had in regards to hiring our guys is what kept pushing for that. So we are opening up our second village in Jackson, Michigan at the Parnell Correctional Facility. I had taken them down there for a tour, and we actually had the space down there. And that's when the conversation really started taking off further. We had a good buy-in from our facility staff there. Our leadership said, "Hey, we have careers for these guys." That's DTE. They're willing to back it. They helped actually fund a lot of the startups for that program. And we said, let's go for it. It took about a year for us to actually set up the program, develop the curriculum. We work side by side with them. They have actually a training center at their down in Detroit. I think it's in Rochester, where they do the exact type of training We wanted it to mimic something more that fit within our realms inside, where we could do like a 6 month to a year long program. And what they would do is get out and then they would continue on in their apprenticeship program. It's actually a 3-year apprenticeship program, but what we're doing is knocking out a year of that program. It's, in the long story short, they come out as T1, T2 apprenticeships. Normally they'd start out as a woodsman when they first get into the program. When they come out of our program and they're hired in with the DTE or one of their local contractors, they're actually starting at it's what's referred to as a T2 apprenticeship. So they're actually paid more. They only have about a year and a half left on their apprenticeship when they're working for these companies. DTE contracts out with 5 different companies within the state of Michigan to do those distribution lines. And our guys work with DTE. DTE had the same conversations with the companies. That's the IBW local, I believe it's local 17. That's who these guys work for, is Wright, Davy, Ashland, those kinds of companies. They'll come in. They had hesitation. I'm not going to tell you they had hesitation, just like what Dan was saying in regards to, hey, do we really want to hire these guys? I went to some of their safety meetings in Detroit, kind of presented the idea. I was there with my DTE partner and presented the idea, and they had some hesitation, but then I actually took them to our village, had them tour it. We expanded on it. Then we kept talking to them about it, and they had an opportunity to visit our guys, talk and do the whole thing. We presented a plan of how we were going to do it. It's been huge. We had opened up the program. It took us a year to set it up. Once we had it set up, we had some bodies in the seats in regards to running the program. We had our instructor hired. We bought all the contractors, DTE executives in. We did a big open house in regards to it. It was really huge. We had inside prisons. We got rid of a lot of our trees. So how are we going to teach climbing inside there without trees? DTE actually funded this for us. They brought in all their trucks and we built pole climbing structures inside there, inside our facility. It is amazing to look at. We actually have 2 live trees inside of our classroom that we practice doing climbs on as well. And we do some cutting in regards to that. DTE hires our guys, everyone that comes out. We have a contact that we work with. They place our guys. They are making $30+ an hour, full benefits, pension when they get out. I know I might be jumping ahead on this one, but one in particular person we put through our program. We put through our entire curriculum, did a really good job. He had probably 6 more months before he's going to be released. This is when we first started it up. We hired him back into our program as a tutor while he's still in prison, so he could help our other guys that were coming through the program. DTE hired him when he got out. He started working for one of the 5 contractors. He did so well that DTE hired him as an instructor at their training academy in Rochester. And then 2 months ago, I actually brought that offender back in along with some DTE executives so he could talk to the class about his experience and what was going on. And that guy is making right now, I want to say he's probably making $85,000, $90,000 a year. Been out for a year and a half, and that's what he's doing. And he is so thankful and grateful of the opportunity that we provided him in regards to that. And his conversation they had with the students was great because we can provide as much as we can, but it's still, there's going to be barriers when they get out. It's inevitable that you're going to run into some barriers, but how do you handle those? We teach a lot of soft skills stuff within our class. We know that there are going to be barriers, but dealing with them, making sure there's people that they're aware of that they can reach out to in regards to some struggles that they might come in with. So that's
and there's nothing like having someone that's already been through the program come back and explain how it works.
Exactly. Dan, I don't know if you want to talk about Fox Motors a little bit, but that's a huge partnership that we have with them too. We have, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk. We have a diesel mechanic program that's coming up, and we have another large national company that's partnering with us, wanting to hire some diesel mechanics coming out of that program. So we're in the process of construction for that program right now.
That was one of my, go ahead, Dan, if you want to do another one. And then I have a question about other investments that you guys might be making. So go ahead.
There's a couple things when it comes to employers. We've been very fortunate to have some employers that stepped in with us and have done some amazing things when it comes to helping our guys. One company in particular bought a vehicle for a guy until he got back on his feet so he could get back forth to work. Fox Motor, as Dean was saying, they actually come to what's called an in-reach meeting, and that's a meeting between myself, the employment counselor, and a community specialist, and then the parole agent, and we all get together on a meeting, and Fox joined that meeting to make sure that whatever that student needed when they got out, they would have clothing, tools, any type of PPE they needed, transportation, medical, anything like that that was needed by the student. They came alongside. They actually asked if they could be part of this meeting. We were so happy that they would join in with this because they wanted to do more for our students when they got out. They've been a great partner, and they just wanted to make sure that they heard exactly what was needed when they're in this meeting so they could come alongside our returning citizen, our student, and help them along, be successful. It's just been amazing when it comes to the partnership we've had with different employers throughout the state who are willing to step up and help our guys.
Do you reach out to those employers first to start that partnership, or do they ever come to you initially, or is it mostly from you reaching out?
It's both. It's both. We've had some who heard about our program through other individuals that have been toured through here, and they sent their contact information to myself, and then I reach out to them. So it's been both ways. It's been great. We're at the point now, we're now starting to see referrals coming from different people that they've heard about our program and want more information. So I reach out to them directly and go over and meet with them.
Okay. I do have a question, 2 questions from the chat. One is about your recidivism rate. What is your recidivism rate, and do you follow up on your offenders after they are released?
Yeah, we do track recidivism rate. Current MDOC, this is non-village numbers. One non-village number is state of Michigan recidivism rate hovers around 27-28% for an overall general population, guys. Now our vocational village guys, we're currently hovering at, for an employment rate, we're at 67%. This is numbers as of last month. I just pulled these yesterday. Our employment rate is at 67%. Our total graduates who have paroled for the vocational village is 1,427. Graduates, we keep track of guys till they're actually discharged, so they're off paper with us. 857 of those people have graduated successfully and discharged off parole. We had 144 graduates who have returned back to prison. So what that tells us is our return to prison rate for our vocational village, it used to be at around 7%. It's now jumped up to a little over 9%. We are having conversations on why that looks like that. Our goal is 0. I don't know if we'll ever be at 0. 7% was pretty good, but when we start to see a 2% jump, we're kind of looking at why. And we're having conversations with not only the offenders, but we're looking at guys that are going out and checking out. When I talk about barriers, what are some of those barriers that it might be causing some of these guys to come back? And we're having conversations right now with different units within offender success of how we could lower that and help assist, because we don't want guys coming back. So
We have a question about if you face any housing issues for offenders.
yes.
Well, I'll make mention of this. We'll talk about the Voc Village specifically for this one piece. They're given a type of parole where they're given extra resources and support on the outside once they leave. So they have someone inside the facility, an institutional parole agent, as well as a facility coordinator, and they're working a little bit more with them to find housing and making sure that they have what they need to be successful on the outside, in addition to what Dan does and other job developers do. Outside of that, we have other prisoners that get referrals for housing based on a completely other section we have in offender success. And there are actually some of them are on the call right now, but we have community resource coordinators on the outside that referrals are given to them. So if they need housing, if they need clothing, if they need access to, bus tickets, things like that, there is a section that we have contracted help with all the housing and everything. That's kind of beyond what education does. But we do have that. There are struggles with it. I've been in on some of those meetings. One thing, and this kind of relates with it, that Dan works with people for is because of the housing situation and because of jobs, there are people, let's say, that might be set up to parole to Detroit, but he can get them a job in depending if you guys know the areas or not, but he might be able to get them a job in Grand Rapids. So he'll work with people within the means, you know, whether it be the parole agents, community coordinators, whoever it is, and try to find housing in that area so that way they can parole to a different area with housing supports that they have and that employment. So we do a lot. Offender education is such a small piece in our offender success section that, you know, and we all work to try to tie them into everything.
James Wing, I guess, is he part of your program? He wrote that his offender success team works directly with vocational villages and returning citizens to the communities, and that for employers that are in Michigan who are not aware of the offender success model, those citizens have offender success job coaches in the field. So it's a team that works together, and he wrote it's a great program, and he's proud to be a part of it. So thank you for clarifying that, James. People are
It's an awesome resource, by the way, for us. He reaches out all the time and works with education and all the other pieces. So yeah, he knows all about that as well. So thanks, James, for chiming in.
People are asking who's funding these programs, and what advice do you have for states that are trying to build these programs? That's a big question, I know, but
Our funds are designated through our legislation, so education is allotted X amount of money, and that's what we use. So it's state funds that are used for that. We sometimes can use some grant funds for certain things, but when I say grant funds, I might be able to buy some equipment off of that. But when you're talking about outfitting an entire CNC program, building a diesel mechanic program, we are going to our legislators, providing sound data back to them and why we want these programs. And typically, as of late, because we have been so successful, we've been able to get additional money through our state legislators for that. We have a wonderful boss who oversees offender success administration. Not only does he oversee offender success administration, but he's also our legislative liaison. So he knows how to have some good conversations with people, can really talk to them about our programs and what we do. And he also handles a lot of our budgeting in regards to our legislation. So
besides advice that you might have for other states, people are asking if you see this model expanding beyond Michigan. Do you work with any of your neighboring states? Do you consult with them on any of these programs that you're doing?
We have a number of states that have come to us. I believe it was Connecticut, and I'm hoping maybe Connecticut Department of Corrections might be on a call. I believe I saw some legislation recently with them where they actually I think they were awarded like $25 million to help in regards to building a model of Michigan's vocational village. And it was specifically worded like that within their legislation, where they wanted to model Michigan's vocational village and build something out there very similar to that. We have states reach out to us all the time, from California to Pennsylvania, Texas, Ohio, all over the place. We've even visited someplace. Ohio has a cosmetology program. We just started a cosmetology program here in Michigan with us. Obviously, we deal with our licensing and regulatory affairs division, but we wanted to have a concept. How do we do this inside of one of our prisons? We looked at there, so we thought it was a good model in regards to setting up a program that we wanted to do, but we want to take it a step further, put it in our vocational village at our women's facility. And it's currently up and running right now. So, yeah.
I'd like to make mention too that we're part of the Corrections Education Association, CEA, and that is a great organization, if people aren't aware of it, to take a look at. And we often have staff at I think every single time there's a conference, we have staff there who is doing presentations on our vocational programs. It gives them a chance. So it gives people a chance to really connect with our staff that are attending there, learn more about the programs. We have, for those in Michigan, we have a conference coming up in August. But again, if you go to the website, thank you for posting that. If you go to the website, you can get information about the CEAs that are local to your state.
So we did talk about a little bit about some improvements that you're trying to make. If there was one takeaway, I guess, from this conversation that you could give to the people that are listening, what is it that you would want them to know about your program? Just one.
Just one.
You could each pick a different one.
Yeah, you know what? When I started with the department, I've been there almost 11 years now. You go in there and you're like, who wants to help these people, you know? And I think that Michigan, I've changed my mind completely. I think we're really about rehabilitation, which is super, super important. And so one of the most important things that from our programs that I see is buy-in. Offenders hearing that we actually do care about them and want them to be successful, and getting their opinion on things, you know, not just telling them you're going to do this, you're going to do that, actually having them make that decision with you about their future and about their success. And that is a big part of our model.
And you mentioned to me one time, Jessica, that you have a saying, the right student, right trade, right time, that's something that's sort of the model you follow. So by involving them in the process as well, that all ties into that as well, I guess. But does that motto kind of work all the way through the process?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. People get mad at us, our staff, because we're always doing lists. And the reason why is because we want to make sure that all these offenders are hitting whatever program it is at the right time during their incarceration, whether it's career scope, voc counseling, getting their state ID application completed, getting into the vocational trade. It falls through that. And even our co-parts, the cognitive programming, you know, we're working with all the people in those sections so that way they're getting their cognitive based programming, and they're also getting their vocational programming at the right time. So yeah, it falls all through offender success.
Dean or Dan, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I guess takeaway for me would be communication, facility buy-in. And I'll be honest with you, what really helps sell our programs, and I'm so glad we created the position, is a position like Dan's, the job developers at the facility. You need somebody like that. You need somebody like Dan at the facility that's really working with the staff and working with the employers. Without that, I don't know how much buy-in we could get. I mean, that's where it started, and where you're allowed to get tours and all that other stuff. So that to me is a key. So
I would add this: these guys are no different than anybody else if they just made a mistake. So I just ask they give them a second chance, a second look, and just take a minute and hear their story. And when you talk to them, you see a scary person. They're just like anybody else. They just had hit a bad road and they need a second shot.
People are asking if you are part of the National Correction Industries Association.
NCIA is part of our MSI, or Michigan State Industries Association. We are not part of that. We've had communications. We do have some MSI factories, dental labs, clothing, footwear, license plates factories, so forth like that. They're not part of education. They would like to be part of education. We do have open dialogue with them. It's just not something that we pursued as of yet right now.
And the last question that's in the chat is what your budget is for the program. I'm not sure which, maybe the Vocational Villages program. Russell, if you want to clarify your question. It just says, what is the budget?
Yes, I wanted to know how much is the whole overall program. And because you're saying you got this department and you got this department, but I'm saying, what is the budget for the overall education?
We're education is allotted X amount line item, X amount for FTEs. And placement. Yep, that includes our FTEs. And then what we'll do out of that line item is, I'll say automotive at X facility gets X amount of money. But I know in regards to that's covering their basic needs of what they need to have done. Now, if they need a large equipment purchase, a new alignment rack or a large piece of equipment breaks, what I give them in their budget doesn't allow them to fix that. But what they'll do is reach out to me, and that's where I'll use some grant funds for that, or I'll go and tap into our general fund money and use that, because we'll have an allotment off of that. Now, if I'm going to do a specific build out, I'm going to use we're going to build a diesel mechanic program. We've already started a conversation with our contractors regarding that. If I know it's going to cost me $3 million to build that, and it's going to cost me additional 1.5 to outfit it with equipment, I'll have that conversation with our administrator to see if he can go back to our legislators and give us a specific amount for that. If they will not or aren't willing to do that, we'll look internally in regards to how we can come up with funds for that. Sometimes we carry a few open FTE positions. We have some additional funds that we're able to look at and come up with, but we do get specific line items. We'll designate program budgets for those. Anything specific that we're looking to build or future expansions, we already had those conversations. We just had them a few weeks back. And then that's when our budgets are built with our legislators, and they'll make a determination. And that's what helps us decide how we're going to move forward.
I hate to stop you there, but we are at time. I could sit here for 2 more hours because there's just so much information, but I want to say thank you again to Dean and Dan and Jessica. The information's been great. It's inspiring to listen to. I'm getting comments asking people if they can share the video with people they work with because they weren't able to be here, but they need them to be able to hear this. So obviously, this is a fantastic topic that's of interest to everyone. So again, thank you. We put everyone's email address in the chat, so feel free to reach out to any of us with any additional questions. If you have future webinar topics you're interested in, please let me know. And again, we'll share the recording, and feel free to share that with anyone that you feel needs to see it. And again, thank you, Jessica, Dan, Dean, and the whole Michigan team, people on chat, all of you. I appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.